Sure. So we'll talk about that clip just a little bit. Basically, DJ was on PicklePod and he said, hey, I'm not allowed to use my Carbon X series at the PPA Austin. And then he made some other statements about how they tested new and old Carbon X series and they all failed a deflection test. And he was told, you can't use these. You're going to have to use something else. Then a player email was sent to the pros that said, pro players, the Carbon Power Carbon 2 models were found to exceed legal paddle requirements following testing done in a lab earlier this month. While USA Pickleball's official ruling process for carbon paddles is still ongoing, the PPA Tour is preemptively implementing additional testing measures for the Carbon Power effective immediately. All Carbon Power models used for professional play must be on-site tested, sticker marked before being used in a match, and at the conclusion of the tournament, Carbon Power models will be sent to a USA Pickleball lab site for additional testing. If a paddle comes back over any of the legal specifications, all points and at-risk prize money amassed at the event where the paddle was used will forfeit. For the purposes of consistency, the PPA Tour is also immediately implementing additional testing measures for all paddles across the board. All paddles used for professional play from the quarterfinals onward must be tested and sticker marked on site. USA Pickleball's Carl Schmidt will be conducting the testing. The PPA Tour stands by its commitment to unify and strengthen pickleball's equipment compliance standards with support from USA Pickleball and Major League Pickleball. Okay, when this came out, everyone was like, oh, the paddles are banned, or they thought they were banned, and everyone was going around and freaking out like, oh, Carbon's getting struck again. First of all, these paddles are not banned. You had the option to use them, and yes, you were heavily incentivized to not use the paddle because, you know, if it went back to the lab, maybe it delaminated while you used it and then gets sent back and now it fails and you lose all your results. So, of course, no one was probably going to use it. I think the only pro that did was Alex Newman, but DJ Young, Thomas Wilson, and Vivian all ended up using the regular Carbon from what I saw. So people were definitely... Wow. Yeah, they were definitely scared out of it. And, you know, I can understand why. The paddles do delaminate at some point, and I wouldn't want to risk, my results, especially because Vivian made it to the gold medal match for women's. So I'd be worried too. I mean, what was your kind of whole take on the thing when that news popped? Like, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah. First of all, I was just kind of amazed at how one clip from DJ just blew everything up, and everybody just was on social media just blowing it up even more out of proportion. And also, I guess why was there such loss in translation? Why was there such miscommunication? You know, why not send that official letter or whatnot beforehand? Why didn't DJ, I guess, consult Carbon first? I mean, did the companies also get this information ahead of time? Like, you'd think that if USAP and PPA got this information, right, they would tell the paddle manufacturers and owners first, and then they could figure out how to deal with it and then let their players know. Like, why would USAP contact DJ directly as a player, right? It doesn't, I don't know. That doesn't make sense.
So as far as I know, it was the PPA that contacted DJ.
Okay, so...
But same thing.
Yeah, same thing. Like, there needs to be, some procedures, like some correct procedures to go about this, or then everybody just freaks out and then it just causes mayhem. And then we're just talking about this and I don't know. It kind of also affects, I think to some degree, rec players as well, too, because once the word gets out or whatnot, and you're using one of these paddles that are quote unquote banned, right? There's a stigma involved, right?
Yep,
and
for sure.
It's not cool to them. It's not cool to the companies. I don't know. It could have all just been handled way better. And granted, they're still trying to figure things out, but I don't know. I felt like this shouldn't have happened, to be honest.
No, I completely agree. The company should be notified. From what I understand, talking to a number of the companies, the transparency between PPA, USAP to the companies might as well be non-existent from my understanding. It doesn't seem like they get updated on what a lot of the new testing standards are, or it's hard to get a hold of them. And I think DJ releasing the statement, was definitely, I mean, kind of crazy. As far as I understand, Carbon, that when that clip went out, that was the first time they had even heard about this news, which is crazy to me. They should not be hearing that news from a social media clip.
Right, exactly. Like, could you imagine the PR that they have to work around and just the scrambling that you'd have to do for the players and the companies? It's not fair to them to be sprung up like this, So I felt sorry for them, to be quite honest. It felt, I don't know. That's just kind of my thoughts on it.
No, I completely agree. And Carbon did release a statement, which I'll read really quick just because I do think that had some good information in it. Dear Carbon family, I wanted to reach out to you and address the developing situation involving the PPA and our Power Series paddle and our sponsored athletes. You may have already read or heard public statements made by athletes and an email sent by the PPA and or the various posts making the rounds of the internet today. There is an incredible amount of misinformation and confusion, so I wanted to provide a thorough and transparent explanation of the situation as it stands today, March 15th. We have been in close communication with the USAP and PPA over the last few days, and I will do my best to clear things up. First and foremost, and importantly, none of the Carbon Power Series paddles are illegal or banned by USAP or PPA. All models and versions of the Power Series remain on USAP's list of approved paddles. Nothing has changed. USAP recently ran a compliance test on a single used Carbon 2X 16mm with approximately 35 hours of use. The source of this single paddle was chosen by USAP, and I personally don't know who owned it or in what condition it was in. Regardless, the paddle exceeded deflection specifications. Rumors were circulating that there were new paddles that failed. This is simply not the case. This was a used paddle. Additionally, USAP made it very clear this was an issue with the specific paddle they tested and not the entire line, meaning that specific paddle would be ineligible for play, but it doesn't affect Carbon paddles as a whole. They also let us know that this issue was not isolated to our brand. I'm not aware of which other brands they were referencing or if those paddles have been tested in the same manner, but I felt it warranted mentioning. While we can't control how people treat their paddles and what they do with them post-purchase, we will continue to strive to manufacture paddles that play consistently and last as long as possible. We are working with USAP engineers and our manufacturers to continue to improve. Additionally, our third-party quality assurance firm will increase the number of paddles inspected during each step of production. In this specific case, where our used Carbon 2X was out of compliance, USAP simply provided the data to the PPA, and it's up to them as owners of the tour to determine how to proceed on the data provided by USAP and their own internal discussions. PPA proactively decided on the following policy for the weekend's PPA tour stop, and then they read the email that I read you just a minute ago. Then they said, I've spoken to each of our sponsored pros and made sure they are aware of the above. Also, I made it clear we will support them no matter which paddle they choose to play with in Austin, given the extremely short notice. At this point, what I outlined above is all I definitely know. I'm confident that we'll be able to work everything out with the USAP and the PPA. The lines of communication are open, and we're doing what we can as a paddle brand to help them continue to improve the sport we all love so much. The sport of pickleball is booming, but there are still growing pains, and a lot is still being asked of USAP and PPA during this phase of extreme growth. They're trying to juggle so many complex challenges at once, and for the most part, I think they are moving in the right direction. And then I'm just going to skim this real quick because I don't think the rest of this is super relevant. The rest doesn't matter too much. That was way longer to read than I thought.
Yeah. Is there a place on the PPA or USAP website where they put up these official kind of notices and newsworthy things to players in the community? So that's what they need, because I felt like shortly after that clip from DJ, or during the weekend, right? There was also the tweet from Ben Johns. And there's just a lot of assumption. He said, add the diamond. I believe he's referring to the 6-0. Add the diamond to the list of paddles with a surface that delaminates along with Carbon, VATIC, and Legacy Pro. And I don't know, why would you, single them out? Because all paddles can delaminate, and is it that big of an issue? And if it wasn't, because this thing got there was no official statement. And then Ben could have easily misinterpreted this and jumped the gun and put out that tweet. And then this just causes, a cascade of, other issues and problems, right? And then to continue, his tweet says, companies will continue to have no respect for the rules until they're actually penalized. I blame no players playing with what they're given, only the companies. But the thing is that these companies are almost just as much in the dark as the players are. And, they're doing their best with what they have. And I think the problem still persists with the lack of transparency with the PPA and the USAP. Granted, they are working on things. I mean, obviously them kind of coming together is a step, I guess, somewhat in the right direction, right?
Yep.
But this, I don't know, this just made it worse, right?
For sure. It was one of those things where once the information went out, everyone started speculating on what it could be, who it could be, what was involved, and it just kind of blew way out of proportion. And I know this, I think it's just normal human tendency to want to speculate so much, but this is why you just have to wait for more information sometimes.